We're going to continue with Ne'ilah in a few minutes. I've been talking during the holidays about the way in which our different physical senses impact our experience of the world. And part of what I had in mind for this moment is speaking about the way in which we give our whole bodies, everything of ourselves through the fast and through just sheer exhaustion, to the divine in this moment. There's a person in our community who embodied that for the past almost 2 weeks, giving of his whole self, doing relief work. And I've invited Jared Resnick to come forward and share a few words about his experience in Western North Carolina.
It was the 7th day of what would become 13. It was the first time I found myself outside the four walls of a synagogue on Rosh Hashanah. But somehow I knew I was where I needed to be. I was open, not closed, to all the possibilities. I am 56, and he couldn't have been more than 24. It was sometime after 7 p.m., a week ago Friday night. The sun had set. It was the end of another day, shoveling mud, tearing out walls, coordinating donations, holding people when there is nothing you can say, and trying to find moments to breathe. I was with the fire chief when he walked inside the second bay of the town's 3-bay fire station. He was covered in mud, perhaps the same mud caked on my clothing just from further up the mountain. He asked if he could have some fuel. I asked him how much. He just needed enough fuel to power his chainsaw and get home. He asked for 3 gallons. He wasn't looking for charity. I offered him a 5-gallon can and a 2.5-gallon can, 2 cans equaling 7.5 gallons of fuel. As we walked towards his car, I noticed the mud line just below his truck windows where the water had raged against the walls of his once blue truck. He was pulling a broken down trailer filled with what was once the contents of his life. It was now trash and flood-soaked memories to be hauled away. We placed the fuel in the trailer, and he thanked me with his hand. I held his hand, and in an instant, I decided not to let go. I asked him if he needed anything else. He said he could use a roll of paper towels. And then from within the car, I heard a soft voice say, maybe a roll of toilet paper too. It was his wife. I suggested they come with me to CJ's. 8 days before, CJ's was our local grocery. Today, it is a place to leave donations. She asked if it was okay if she stayed back with the car. There were 4 kids inside. They were quiet. I never saw them. I said we would be right back. Then the 2 of us, in silence, walked across the dusty dirt track of a road. We stepped inside the old grocery. The floors, once white, had been painted dirty, washed brown by the flood waters, the same color found on every floor of this town. The fans were blowing hard in an attempt to move a moisture that permeated everything inside. The temporary lights glared. The water line sat etched with particles above my head. We stood before the aisles, once filled, where patrons came to purchase goods. All of that had been destroyed. And now, the aisles were filled again with goods that were not for sale. I asked if he needed some soap. He reluctantly said yes. Perhaps some sponges. Maybe yes. Some toothbrushes for the kids, if it's okay. How about some towels, some paper plates, some disinfectant, some Band-Aids, some snacks for the kids, some canned food, hydrogen peroxide, cotton swabs, water, juice. I was trying to give him everything. Everything stood before him. He could have had anything. He was a proud man, just kept quiet, and I continued to offer. We filled up boxes. We placed the boxes in his trailer, and then he drove away. He was a proud man, still trying to stand tall in their now broken world. I was left standing alone, caked in mud, probably the same mud as his, just from a little further down the mountain. My Toyota Tacoma has a 21-gallon gas tank. My wife's Volvo somewhere in that range. I once had a Dodge Ram 2500 diesel truck, and that thing could hold around 32 gallons. I had never thought of fuel beyond those numbers. It's beyond comprehension to be offered 1,500 gallons of diesel donated, and then find out within the same hour someone else wants to donate 3,000 gallons more. In a 60-minute period of time, I was offered 4,500 gallons of donated fuel. How does that happen? I have no idea. But I couldn't say no. You never say no in a crisis. Once you shut off the flow, you can never turn it back on. I said yes. I now had 24 hours to find and have someone donate storage tanks to house 4,500 gallons of fuel. Someone said to me, I had created another problem. As I repeated over and over to all these wonderful people, to everyone, there is no such thing as a problem. A problem is merely a situation that hasn't found a solution. And so it began the hunt for a combination of 500-gallon, 1,000-gallon, above-ground storage tanks. Too many phone calls to count amidst the thousands of other tasks and other needs being addressed. 18 hours later, we had them. We had secured them. Where did they come from? As I write this, I'm scratching my head to remember. I honestly just don't know. What I do know is all the fire trucks, the ambulances, and the emergency vehicles are filled with fuel, and lives continue to be saved. I met someone on the first day who cooked meals every day, never moving his trailer from the front of the firehouse. He fed the exhausted, the worn down, the sleepless souls who drifted in and out of town. He told me that he had been in 26 disaster zones in his life. He was in New Orleans when Katrina made landfall. He said this, here in Lansing, North Carolina, was the worst he had ever seen. On the coast, the water rises and then it goes away, leaving destruction in a different way. Here, this 1,000-year flood caused the rivers to rage, washing everything away. Stranding people unknown in places unseen. He wanted to help. He needed to help, so he kept on cooking every day, perhaps to feed some of the pain away. I, with so many people, so many amazing people, have been a part of landing a military helicopter in the middle of a town, bringing in semis of hay for horses and cattle. We repaired culverts, commandeered buildings to house supplies. We deployed Army Rangers, sending the National Guard on recon missions to hard-to-reach areas. I have worked with the most amazing, truly incredible people. Most of them I didn't know before. I worked with the mayor, county officials, the head of the chamber, North Carolina disaster relief teams, and FEMA. I have run traffic control for the governor, coordinated medical services, acquired insulin and oxygen, helped create an action plan with divisions of labor, and 1 week ago today, I actually saved a life with an EpiPen. This has been my life, our lives, all of us, working together every day for the last 13 days in the disaster zone that is right now Western North Carolina, in this state, our state. The rebuilding has not begun. It's going to take a long, long time to get there. There were 27 bridges destroyed, and I mean destroyed. Thousands of homes left, no longer inhabitable. Towns have disappeared, and we are still searching for people they are actually missing. If you asked me 20 days ago, I had actually lost hope in humanity. I really had. The hatred, the lies, the targeting of minorities, the anti-Semitism, the politics, the bombing, the wars, it had all reached for me a breaking point. And then Hurricane Helene hit. And in its wake, it was all washed away. What I found left behind undeterred within the sadness, the pain, the destruction was caring, was compassion, was beauty, was strength, was resilience, was warmth, was understanding, and most of all, an immense outpouring of love. People joining together to help one another without knowing a name. As I stand before you today, I'm struggling with where I just was, where Jennifer just was, where I am now, and where I'm going back to next week. I don't know how I got to where I was, other than to say what our beloved rabbi always says, how many miracles had to happen to create that moment. I actually stand before you, both broken and reborn. Soon we'll close the gates to the ark, marking the end of everything up until that moment. And when we hear that familiar clank of our beloved ark's metal gates touching, when they shut before us, and we all begin our movement into the new year, we must all ask ourselves, are we as individuals, are we as a community, are we open or are we closed? Lashana Tova.